Hey, I'm Tommy Ellison, and this is Senior Moments. I can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, but I remember every detail of that time I came this close to being suspended my senior year in high school, just 3 weeks before graduation. So stick around. This is proof that some things from a misspent youth just don't fade away. Let's go. Well, hey guys, welcome to Senior Moments, episode number 18, that we call Prank Gone Wrong. You know, last week I talked a lot about my experiences with numbers, that is, two-a-days, and running with my good friend Danny Evans, and us watching the lottery numbers when they were pulling the draft numbers for guys to get drafted, and at that point go in the service and go more than likely to Vietnam. And my point being, I guess, that Danny and I were very close friends, and this particular episode, number 18, Pranks Gone Wrong, is another story about Danny and I. And, you know, there's a subtitle to these podcasts. It's called Evidence of a Misspent Youth. And I don't really want to put that label on Danny, more on me, but it seems like a lot of these stories just involve Danny. And Danny, if you're watching, you can, again, validate in the comments whether you actually, I guess, appreciate or perhaps can validate the sincerity and the truthfulness of all this. Because today, number 18 is another story about my best friend, Danny Evans. And the night we were out cruising around in his red Volkswagen hatchback. And if you know Danny from back then, you know that was his car of choice, I guess. As long as I ever knew him, he was driving that car. And in this particular instance, I was home from college that weekend. I'd gone off to University of Tennessee at Chattanooga on a football scholarship. And since I was and by the way, this was back in the, 1969, I guess, and there were no freshmen playing at that point in time. So the freshmen were essentially all redshirted, but in reality, no freshmen played, so you wouldn't play to your sophomore year. So being a freshman, and when there was weekend games where they were not playing at home, I would always come home, and Danny and I would typically always hook up, and we get in his red Volkswagen hatchback, and that was kind of the backstory. That weekend, Danny and I did what we always seemed to do. We would just cruise around and, spend a lot of time in the Shawnee's parking lot, I guess, cruising and seeing who all was around. But by then, most of the guys that we knew from our senior year were in college, and so they were off. And so it wasn't like it was a big reunion, but for Danny and I, it was our reunion during that fall. And, gas was cheap back then. I can remember buying it for like 19.9. We'd get $1 worth of gas, and we could cruise all night. And so that was the scenario, cruising the strip, on the Bessemer Superhighway, rolling through, Shawnee's parking lot, and, going up to Zeke's Hamburgers, and just kind of messing around, really looking for something to do. And, just seeing if we could find any of our old high school buds who were, still in town. And, if I recall, this particular weekend, the pickings were slim. And so we were actually, thought, will it beat sitting at home watching television? And so we were kind of looking for some trouble to get into, I guess. And later that night, we wound up back at my house on Hillside Drive. And I'm not exactly sure where they were, but my parents were out of town. So it was just the two of us, bachelors, My 63 Ford Fairlane, gunmetal gray with the mag wheels and the right white letters, was parked on the street in front of my house. And Danny parked his VW right behind me as we came in and prepared to, flip on the tube and see what was in the refrigerator and basically just make a night out of it. So I don't even remember what we did once we got inside. Probably ate snacks and watched some TV. Eventually, though, we called it a night. The next morning, I was doing the usual ritual, rubbing my head, scratching my butt, trying to figure out what time it is. And I walked to the front door of my house and I said to myself, I thought, hey, I'll have a little fun with Danny. So I hollered at him back in the back bedroom where he was. I said, Danny, come quick. Somebody stole your car last night. Well, he walked up and he looked outside, and of course he saw his VW sitting there and said, real funny, ha, ha, ha. And we laughed, and then we went back inside and we started scrounging around for some breakfast. And a few hours later, Danny said he had to head home. So I was there alone by myself. And not long after, he had left, I walked up to the front window again. And this time I realized my car was gone. The 63 Ford Fairlane, gunmetal gray, mag wheels, raised white letters, the 8-track player, the big box of 8-track cartridges with all my favorite music and, several association and Letterman tapes I used to, assist me in any wind-fogging romantic encounter I might have. Well, anyway, the story there. But nevertheless, gone. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. I'm probably 17, 17, just turned 18. And so, I pick up the phone and I call the Fairfield Police Department. I got a report of stolen car, right? Now, my mom and dad, this was before cell phones, and I don't even remember where they were, but apparently they were someplace that I didn't readily know how to get in touch with them. And so when I talked to the guy on the phone, the police officer that took the call, he tells me, he said, well, I can't really do anything until I, get the VIN number and the tag number on the vehicle. And like I said earlier, I was 18. I had no clue where to even find that information. That was always my mom's job. She worked at the credit union. She was the one that wrote the insurance on the cars and, did all the paperwork. So, man, I started tearing through the house, and I'm digging through desk drawers and file cabinets. And finally, I found an old tag receipt with the info on it. Now, get ready. I called the police back. And I gave them everything they needed, and I waited for him, to say, well, we'll put out an all points bulletin and see if we can find your car this morning. And that was my expectations of how the police would handle it. They were the police. They were the police. They were supposed to go out and find my car, And did I mention it was a 63 Ford Fairlane? It was bad looking. It had gunmetal, mag wheels, raised white letters, 8-track player, big box of 8-track cartridges with all my favorite music and all those association tapes and Letterman. And, anyway, yeah. So I waited for his response, waiting for him to say, well, we'll put out an all points bulletin. I needed to hear his plan to recover my car. Let me do that one more time. And this is what he said. Well, most of the time when cars are stolen around here, we find them in deserted lots somewhere, and all the parts are stripped off of them, and typically they're burned beyond recognition. And my heart sank. I was devastated. And I thanked him politely, and I told him I'd just appreciate it if he'd try to find my Fairlane Ford first. You remember the 63 Ford Fairlane with the gunmetal gray, the mag wheels, the raised white letters, the 8-track player, the 8-track tapes with all my favorite music. The Association, the Letterman, Jimi Hendrix. And then he said this, and as long as I live, I will never forget what he said. He said, quote, "If we don't find your car, or if it's burned, I've got a clean little 65 Ford LTD I'll let you have cheap." Now, my car had been missing for less than 12 hours, and he's already trying to sell me a used car of his. I bit my tongue. I thanked him politely and told him I just appreciated if he'd try to find my Ford Fairlane. He kind of seemed disappointed I didn't bite on his little pitch to sell his LTD. But it was a weird day and a weird night before, but it got weirder that particular Saturday after our gallivanting around. And have you ever had a car stolen? What'd you do? How'd you handle it? Leave it in the comments if you would. Did your police department offer you a special deal on a replacement? Well, this has been Senior Moments, my evidence of a misspent youth. And you be sure to tune in next week, live at 5, for another adventure of Tommy Ellison and the misspent youth. And if you would, remember to listen carefully to this guy that's about to come on camera here. He's going to give you some good advice, and I would appreciate you following it. Cool? Thanks for tuning in. Y'all are great. Be sure if you're watching the replay to leave a comment if you would. Deal? Deal. Well, hey, thanks for spending a few minutes with me on Senior Moments. If you enjoyed the ride, be sure and tap that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. I'll be back soon with more stories from a misspent youth, and maybe some of yours too.